So the spectrum of disease, this is a slide that Dr. Galgiani put together, and we all use it. And it just helps us understand how much cocci is out there and how much of it you're actually going to see as a clinical practitioner. So out of 100 infections, 60 are going to have no symptoms at all. About 40% will have any symptoms. Of the 60 that don't develop symptoms, they go on to develop lifelong immunity. So those people will never know that they had cocci, will likely never be tested, and they'll never have any issues with it. Of the 40 who are symptomatic, about 37 of them recover. And a lot of them will have mild enough disease that they'll think that they had a viral illness, or maybe they think they were just really exhausted for a long time. And a lot of them will never actually know that they have the disease either. So those 37 recover, and a few of those may actually recur if they are treated with immunosuppressive agents or have an immunosuppressive disease later in life. About 2 to 4 out of those original 100 will go on to disseminate, and those are the ones, of course, that need to be identified right away and have to have treatment, or the disease will be fatal. And you'll hear, actually, from these 4 talks, you may hear 4 different numbers on the percent who go on to dissemination. You can find a ton of estimates in papers, and you'll see numbers all the way up to 5%, quite honestly. My belief is that it's less than 1%, and most of the estimates that are out there are based on reported disease, and so much disease goes unreported that it's probably less than 1% in reality that disseminate. So these are the best we can do with estimating prevalence, because the coccidioides skin test is no longer available in the United States. Actually, Mexico still has it, and they are working on approving that. I'm hoping either one of the following speakers can comment on where they are with the cocci skin test. But we don't have it available now, so that was the best way we had to estimate prevalence. So some experts came up with these figures, that there are approximately 150,000 cases annually in the United States. And since we know 60% of reports come from Arizona, that means about 90,000 would come from Arizona. And since only 40% are symptomatic, it's estimated that about 36,000 would be in Arizona per year. And if you look at Maricopa County, we actually, we did a serology test. There's someone here from CDC Mycotics, and they were kind enough to come out and help us do a sero survey in the Northwest Valley. And what we did was we looked at remnant sera from individuals that were over 65. So this is not a random sample in any way. This is individuals that were over 65, and we looked at a specific area of the Northwest Valley and compared it to the rest of Maricopa County. But what we found was that in this specific area, there were 9 of 797 sera that were seropositive by immunodiffusion. And in the remainder of Maricopa County, 0.75%, or 6 of 797, were positive. So what that tells us is that in the whole of Maricopa County, the seroprevalence is probably about 1% by immunodiffusion at any one time. And what we know is that that's probably an underestimate, because there are folks out there that are infected with cocci, and you'll hear a lot more about this later, that won't be positive by immunodiffusion because it takes some time to develop an immune response to that. So that 1%, or 0.94%, is probably a slight underestimate. So I talked already about the seroprevalence survey, and the objective was to compare a very high reported rate in that Northwest Phoenix area compared to the rest. I already really talked about the methods. And basically, when you break down that 0.94%, the prevalence estimate is anywhere from 40,000 to 60,000 cases at any one time in Maricopa County. So that's a lot of disease. That's at one time, and again, that's probably an underestimate because of the fact that immunodiffusion doesn't pick up all the active cases. So for cocci surveillance that we do in public health, you always have to take into account a couple of caveats. First, for this disease, only 40% are symptomatic. And we've estimated that since a lot of them think that they have a viral illness or maybe they don't have access to care, that probably less than a third of those are ever clinically evaluated. Probably anywhere from 8 to 10% of the total infections are ever serologically confirmed because docs don't necessarily think of cocci and they don't necessarily order testing. And even if they do order testing, if it's too early in the disease, it's going to come up negative. So only serologically confirmed cases are generally reported to public health. So all the numbers that you're going to see me present are going to be underestimates of the true disease burden. But one of our goals today is to get clinicians thinking about cocci early and often and getting them to diagnose it more to lessen that underestimate. So this is a graph from Dr. Galgiani that he put together comparing Arizona data to California data. And I think it's helpful to put that in perspective. And you can see the kind of orangey color is California, and that lighter color is Arizona. And what you can see is that before 1997, which was an important year for us in Arizona, before it was laboratory reported in Arizona, most of the cocci came from California. But as you can see that since 2000, the vast majority of cocci does come from Arizona. So this is the rates of reported valley fever in Arizona from 1994 to 2010. The lab reportability began in 1997, and that's when every single positive laboratory test for cocci was reported to Arizona Department of Health Services and was counted as a case. And that's why you see that fairly rapid rise around 1997. But what you see is a continued rise all the way up through the first decade of 2000. And what I want to point out is that in 2008, the rate goes from about 73 and jumps up to 155 per 100,000 people in 2009. That huge jump actually represents an artifact of reporting. One of the major labs in Arizona had not been reporting EIA serology unless it was confirmed by immunodiffusion to public health. And what happened in 2008 was all of the positive serology by EIA, regardless of confirmation by immunodiffusion, was reported to public health, and all of a sudden the rates doubled. So we don't actually believe that there was a rise in disease. We believe that that level of disease was always out there. We just weren't detecting it because of the reporting method, and that these rates that you're seeing, 155 in 2009 and 186 in 2010, that those represent a more accurate assessment of disease burden in Arizona. This is a map just to visualize. The darker the color, the higher the rate of cocci. And as you can see, the vast majority of cocci in Arizona is in Maricopa, Pima, and Pinal counties. Ever since the haboob in July of 2011, we've been doing some heightened surveillance to see what type of effects the recent dust storms have had on the cocci prevalence. Dr. Galgiani has been working really hard with Clarisse Sang at ADHS to follow the data on literally a weekly basis, and he was kind enough to let me present these slides to you. So this first one shows the valley fever cases per week in 2011. And as you can see, the date is on the x-axis, and it's just the number of cases on the y-axis. So it's not a rate. I don't want to make anyone think that it's a rate. So it's just a number, but what's interesting is the trend. And what you can see, Maricopa is represented by the yellow line, which of course has the vast majority of cases. Pima is the pink line, that's the second highest rates, and Pinal is down there below Pima. But what you can see, surprisingly, is right after that July 5th haboob, there was a considerable decrease in reported valley fever, and we do think that may have been an artifact. But you can see that a few weeks later, it did seem to go up a little bit. There's a little bit of a spike. Looking at cumulative valley fever in Maricopa County, what this is the yellow line looks at Maricopa County numbers of cases, and the trend line in 2011 compared to the white line, which represents the number of cases by over time in 2010. And what you can see is if you just follow the slope of the line, is that it's a much steeper slope in 2011 following that July 5th haboob compared to 2010. So it does look like we're seeing a greater increase in valley fever after the haboob. So this is that same graph for other counties, and the pink is represented by Pima County. The solid line is 2011, and the dotted line is 2010. And you can see that the numbers and the slope is a little bit steeper all the way around for 2011 compared to 2010 in each of those three counties and the rest of Arizona. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we know about our reported valley fever cases in Arizona. Again, these are the ones that seek care and that get diagnosed and are reported to public health. So you're probably seeing a sample of cases that are more severe because they're more likely to be detected. In 2007, we were able to look at the 5,000 cases that we had reported to us and sample 1 out of 10 of them and actually do a more in-depth interview to get information about those cases. At the time, 54% were male and 46% were female. Looking at race, about 6% were Native American, 3% were Asian, and 8% were African American. The average age was about 51 years, ranging from 38 days to 99 years. And interestingly, the rates among individuals over 65 years were more than twice the rates in the general population. So that's really important. We know that individuals over 65 are at higher risk for dissemination, but there also may be some bias in there that they may be more likely to seek health care, or they may be more likely to experience the symptoms and be concerned that they are related to another chronic illness.